Okay, everybody, I am really excited today. I'm doing something I've never done before. We have 3 actors with me today, and I just want to say happy Thanksgiving. This episode comes out the day before Thanksgiving, and I thought I would have on 3 actors whom I really admire, whom I've gotten to know over quite a few months. I'd say Alison, I think we've been together for quite a while, and Matt too, and Sharon over the past year or so, right? And so I've got these 3 actors here because they have taught me a lot, and so I wanted this to be an episode where I'm just sharing what I've learned from these actors that I work with. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves kind of one at a time so that you can get to know them better and you can know a little bit more about their story. And I thought we would go alphabetical by first name for no good reason. So Alison, I'm going to just throw you in the hot seat first. Will you just kind of give everyone a little bit of background of, where you're from, where you're at now, a little bit of what's going on in your career? And these are the same questions from Sharon and Matt. I'd love you two to share so that we can jump in.
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Alison Stolpa. I'm originally from Minneapolis. I always wanted to be an actor, but I kind of fell away from that and got really involved in like music and music industry. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And then when I found out I was going to be moving to LA, I was like, I think it's time to re-examine this dream that has been like silently burning inside of me. And I've been here for a while and yeah, doing the thing.
Wait, and I just want everyone to know because you can't see Alison. Alison's like the coolest chick you've ever like seen in your life. I think Alison, it's okay to say that. Alison's using the word chick. Like I just feel like if I was like, whoa, like I'm not cool enough to like hang out with her. Like she's got the best like straight bangs and this black hair, and I always come to that question like, look how cool she is. Like Alison, do you feel as cool as we feel like when we're around you?
No, I just feel eternally like excited about everything.
Oh my God, right. I got it. Got it. Good, good. That is what I love that much more than a cool attitude. I would just say like Allison has style is the way I would describe you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, welcome to the show. Will you introduce yourself to everybody a little bit?
Yeah, hi. My name's Matt. Pronouns are they, them. And I'm a non binary actor based in Los Angeles. I do a lot of activism stuff and I also do a lot of film and TV stuff. I'm now recently like a podcast co host with my roommate, so that's been dope.
Whoa, I better back down. Maybe hand you the mic for a while then. You could take over today. Wait, so you have to plug your podcast. Matt, what's the podcast so we can all listen?
Oh, yeah. The podcast is called Into the Studio, which is like the worst name for it because you can't Google it. Like it comes up with like a million different other things, but it's called Into the Studio. Our main focus is queer artists, like music artists and stuff. And we interview them and do lyric analysis, and it's great.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Wait, and Matt, we've known each other since you were in New York City. So we've had like a bi-coastal journey with your life, in fact. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I started in New York City with film and TV acting since I was like 14-ish, and then I moved to LA mid-pandemic in August 2020.
Right. I remember that totally. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And Sharon, last but not least, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
honored.
So happy you're here. Tell everybody a little about yourself. You guys, wait, I just want everyone to know, like, isn't it the shittiest moment when someone says, tell everyone about yourself? Like, I just want to just applaud y'all's courage and bravery of like going forward at the beginning of this podcast. So just want to say that. So audience people out there, just put yourself in their shoes for a second. If you're not somebody who's on podcasts often, like, I think it's pretty awesome. So Sharon, share a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm an actor and a writer, and I started out here for a couple of years. Then I went to Manhattan and was there for about 12 years. Did a lot of stage work and Broadway and off Broadway, and then came back out here and started doing a lot of film and television. I've learned from Brian, dear. This is what I've learned from you. I mean, honestly, I never knew this before, but one of the things that I got from you is, why did I start this journey? Why am I still, I'm an actor for 40 years. And, what I found out from working with you is that when I was in high school, I wanted the lead in the musical, but I wasn't supposed to get it because I wasn't part of the Sweet 16s. That was the girls singing group. They wouldn't let me in because I had this really strong voice. And I was ashamed about that. And I thought, I'm never going to get the lead. And I did all this work on the accent. And I did all this work. And I said to God, if I get this, I will know that I'm supposed to do this for the rest of my life. Wow. And I have gone off track because, I got hit in the jaw at one point on stage and had to stop for quite a few years as they put it back into place. And I wrote 16 children's books along the way, but I have always come back because this is my calling. And I learned that from you. I mean, I really got that from working with you.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. That was a really beautiful way you said that. And, part of what I think, as I try to take that in, I'm not good at taking things in, but it's the day before Thanksgiving on when this is going to be aired. So I'm going to try to be in the spirit of taking that in, is that sometimes I think, my job is to help you just articulate what you already know, to give you the language for it, because you knew when you were 16 that this is what you're meant to do, but then having the language to grab onto that. So in this conversation today, you guys, is going to be a very round table. We're going to all talk on top of each other and share with each other. But I'm just going to start out by I'm not always going to go in order, but right now I want to start out by taking you back to a moment when I was working with Alison. And we, I've known all of you through the pandemic at some point. We've spent some of the pandemic together because we've known each other for a while, right? And damn the pandemic. First of all, can we just say that? It was a rough time for a lot of us. And then also, I will say there was a little bit, at least with some of you, I experienced this. We got to hibernate, or we got to experience a different way of thinking about putting ourselves out there, because we didn't have to do it in the same, we weren't missing out. There was some degree of we're preparing. I don't know. I see Sharon nodding your head. How did that resonate for you when I said that?
Well, I was one of those, first of all, in 2019, 1 year before the pandemic hit us and we shut down, I was on life support from a mistake, from a routine operation. The doctor made a mistake. I was on life support for 7 weeks.
Oh my God. I didn't know that, Sharon. Wow.
And when I woke up, I was on something called an ECMO machine. When I woke up, I couldn't walk. I couldn't swallow. And it took me the first year, so March 2019 to March 2020, I was recuperating. I was on oxygen. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't get out of bed for months. And I worked myself. It was very hard. And I have to say, there was times when I thought, why did you let me live? You should have let me go. But anyway, blah, blah. The thing is that now I forgot the question.
We were just talking about how it's great. Whatever the story you're telling is so powerful, and so what we're talking about is just how 2020 kind of gave us this hibernation moment.
Oh yeah. So I needed at least another year to recuperate.
Got it.
And so being in the pandemic was such a gift for me. It was such a gift because I was able to stay home and recuperate and not feel I can't get out for auditions. I can't do what I do, Yeah. So I was really grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, you had something to say. And Alison, I screwed up. I said you were going to talk. I totally went all over the place. Sorry, Alison. So you can sit there at the ready, but we'll get you in a second, I guess, because we're in it now. It's happening. Matt, what were you going to say?
Basically, I feel like this pandemic really forced me to get to know myself, because I was forced to be with myself, because I pre-pandemic, I was acting and doing PA work. So I was busy 24/7. And so I never had time to sit with my emotions, maybe process a few things. And then boom, pandemic happened, film industry shut down, and I was just left with myself. And that was an interesting journey. Cause I found out that I'm actually autistic, got my diagnosis, saw a therapist, put more energy into healing mentally. And it's been a journey. And I feel while the pandemic's absolutely awful, in some ways in my life, it's been so exponential to my growth as a person. And also that translates into my acting, because now I'm I'm more confident. I can do things. Yay.
Wow, yeah. And like, and just to think about that in that same year, you're like, and I think I'll move across the country while you were learning these big things about yourself is
Oh
like,
my God,
yeah.
that was so stressful because like when back in the one-on-one workshop where I saw you in February 2020
Yeah.
before the world ended,
Yes.
was like I during that I was like, okay, if I sign with an agent and manager, like I'll move to LA, I'll just take that chance. And I signed with them on my flight home. And then of
Wow.
course in March the pandemic happened. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And Allison, we started this whole thing. We were starting with you. Now we're back. How did you experience some of this time apart?
Yeah, I'm like the counterpoint because I hated every moment of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, I was lucky to keep my day job, but also that meant that I was working full time while everyone else was kind of hibernating and getting time to think about things and like writing their great American novel or whatever. Um, and
Or they were kicking themselves because they weren't writing it. Let's just be real. Some people were right.
I kicked myself too. I was like, why aren't you finding time for this on top of working all the time and being stressed out all the time?
Yeah.
I would also like to note that a global pandemic has been my number one worst fear since I read a review of The Hot Zone at age 9. So
Oh my God.
I was like personally offended that this was happening.
Also, and I also want to make sure to our listeners, like, we are not making light of something that was really big. We're finding our own personal journeys through what this was like for us, which I think is so vital to share here. So I want to make sure that we're not saying like pandemic, schmandemic. No one is saying that here as we're saying this, just to give our listeners context. But each of us, while a pandemic was a group experience, each of us had our own individual stories within it, which is why, and this is not a pandemic episode, but the reason why I was coming to Allison is that during that time, I remember you feeling pretty crunchy at home and feeling pretty like and what I remember you taught, this is what I took away from that moment. Like we were talking about, do you remember the coaching when you kind of brought this up? Do you remember the conversation we had?
Yeah, because I feel like I brought it up once and then I just like wanted to bring it up all the time because I did not personally understand how people were thriving in it because I was in such a bad place.
Yeah. And in your bad place, if I can speak for you, you'll get me right if I get this wrong.
Yeah.
But your bad place felt like I can't accomplish anything. I'm feeling a little bit lonely. But you weren't. I didn't. It's interesting because I didn't experience you as sad. I experienced you as like, almost like a caged animal. Is the best way I could describe it. Like a caged animal who can't flap their wings or run or something. Like the way you would picture like an unhappy animal at a zoo is, like. Does that relate to you at all? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm calling you an animal at a zoo right now. That's not,
I love animals, so that's okay. No, that totally resonates with me now that you've said it. Like I remember at the time just feeling overwhelming sadness and like anger and also fear and frustration and not just for me, but for all the like tons of people out there who are getting sick and like the people I knew who were getting sick and their parents who are in the hospital and stuff. But yeah, I think caged animal is a very good synopsis of the way
and here's what I want to say. This is what I took away. This is what you really taught me. This is the Thanksgiving episode. And this is what I want to thank you is through it, you started to, I know you said you would bring it up on all of our coaching calls. And I was like, yes, because what I noticed in you was you were like, I'm willing to put one foot in front of another to consistently, like, you couldn't change the situation, but like change the way you were relating to it. And I think sometimes, especially in the world we're in where we hold up the World Wide Web in our phone, when's the last time you said the words World Wide Web, right? When you hold the internet in your hand, right? That we want a quick fix. And there was, what Allison just showed me was I can take consistent action to relate to this differently. And it might change from week to week. And Allison, this might not be the experience you were having. This is the way I observed it. So you can fix me up here if I got this wrong. But what I was just noticing was like, I remember we had this thing with the teacup where you were leaving a teacup out to like start your morning differently or to like have a moment when it wasn't work. And I don't remember, but to me, it just landed so hugely of like, we can relate to small parts of our lives differently. And then it can change the whole day. And you're nodding your head. Can you just share like, can you share a little more with the audience, just kind of like what that meant to you?
Yeah, so the teacup was to signify that my workday was done because I was, spending my entire day in an extremely small room.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm actually still on that path now. It's kind of something that I guess I've realized, and now that I'm no longer necessarily stuck at home all the time, I feel like this has kind of like blossomed for me, and I've been able to kind of see it in a more positive way than a like, this is my only option way. But I have been realizing like, one step in front of the other, keep going. And like, maybe things aren't all gonna like miraculously all like rain down on me just because I've been putting in the work, but like bit by bit, I'm getting closer to where I want to be. And
Yeah.
I'm learning patience, which I
Yeah.
never saw as a virtue.
Oh, I love the way you said that. And also because, Summer and I talked to Summer, just in case for those of you listening who haven't met Summer yet, she's on like many of my podcast episodes, but Summer is my like happiness manager who helps with this community. Summer and I were talking about each of you before I came to the call, because I was saying, here's what I feel like I observed and what did you observe? So just so you know, you've been talked a lot about this week. Summer was like, yeah, Alison really exhibited consistency, like consistently saying, I'm going to show up. I'm going to take the little step. And can you just, because our audience, I'm sure, is super curious now, just around the teacup and how that ritual worked, just in case anybody wants to steal how that worked for you and how we set that up?
Yeah. So, what we decided was I was going to choose like a special teacup. The year before, like 3 months before the pandemic, I had gone to visit some friends in England, and I had bought kind of as a joke, kind of because I loved it, a very like poorly made Meghan Markle and Prince Harry teacup. And I was like, this is my special teacup.
Wait, their faces are on the outside?
Yeah, it's like a grainy, blurry photo of like their like wedding kiss.
Yes, yes.
I bought it at the airport.
Yes. Okay.
It looks unlicensed, but they sold it at the airport, so somebody made it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I would just have this ready, and I would know like at 5 p.m. the workday is over. I can transition to doing something else and have a little bit more like structure, and like maybe it's time to meditate, maybe it's time to like work on a creative project or something. But there's a stop and a start to this period, and beginning to the next.
And just as I'm taking that away from that too, is like so many of us need that. I don't know if Sharon or Matt, you relate to this, but like I'm in work mode, I'm at home, I'm in be with my partner mode, I'm in go grocery shopping mode. Wait, am I still in work mode? Because my phone's in my hand. Like it's very, to make that distinction and have a physical action attached to it. I see you both nodding your head. Sharon, what did you want to say?
Well, I just wanted to say that I was there for a lot of Alison's talks during our get-togethers, and it was very powerful. I mean, because we all sit there and really identify or somehow relate, because we're all going through stuff like this, and it's just very powerful to be there and to hear, oh, there's something we can do. I mean, another thing that I learned just a couple of weeks ago from Brian is I was overwhelmed and tired, and he said, do a Post-it, one thing on the Post-it every day, and then stick it on the wall. You should see my office. It's full of stickers.
I love it.
Doing it, and I am not overwhelmed anymore.
Oh, I love it. I'll just share with you guys. So I taught a class, yesterday and the day before called Become Offer Only. And so here's what I'm just going to spill here, a little backstage pass for you guys, is I was started to make the class as I looked at some slides on my computer. And I was like, oh, I can steal some of this slide that I made before. And then I would go like this. My brain is not working. What is, like, it's not an experience I have very often. I was like, this is not, and I can't walk away from the microphone, but I would like to show you that. I would walk away from my computer and go, let's go over here. And I was like, am I tired? What's wrong? I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, things were getting a little weird. I was like, let me go to a Post-it note and write down what I want people to take away from class. And then I 6 Post-it notes. Now I know what I'm doing. And so it's such a simple trick. But the reason why the Post-it works is because it's small. Like you have, I can only write one thing. The other side of this door in my office right now, if you guys watch this on YouTube, you can see where I'm pointing right now. But if on the other side of this door is the Post-it notes for how I figured it all out, because they stick to the door and they don't ruin the door, right? Yeah. Matt, do you relate to anything of what Alison's journey, how that worked for her, of how that kind of like a solution we came up with for her?
Kind of, yeah. Like, especially if I'm confined into one space, it's hard for me to control my environment in a sense that like can transition from one thing to another, whether it's like doing work or like do whatever. Because if it all just mushes together, I get extremely overwhelmed and then I don't do anything because I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I might as well just lay on the floor for 3 hours instead of like, doing what I need to do.
Totally.
So I kind of had like a thing where I set like almost like a loose schedule for myself because I don't do well with structure. My brain likes spontaneity, but if I have like a
Oh.
loose skeleton of how my day is supposed to be, then my brain is happy. So I had like this thing where I would be like, okay, so let's say I want to like work on monologues just for myself in the morning, do my meditation and all this. I would basically, because I had in my bedroom back in New York, LED lights. So I would change them to each color for like what type of event that I was gonna do.
Oh, I love it.
So I would use that, and it was a way to control my environment to be like slightly different. So my brain's like, yes, let me get that dopamine real quick, and enough for me to just sit and be able to do what I wanted to do without overcrowding my brain, and then just yeah.
Yeah, and what I really love about you said, and I hope that everyone can kind of take away what you said, is by changing our environment, it can give us that switch, right? I think that's a big takeaway that we can get from this. Like, I used to have a rule for myself, which I've been breaking lately. I'll probably bring it back, which is at 6 p.m., I'm no longer allowed to be in front of the big computer. Like, if I want to do a little bit of work, I must be on my laptop, because my laptop gets frustrating for me at a certain point because I'm usually on a bigger computer. And so that way I know I won't work for very long. So after 6 o'clock, if you're going to get work done, you got to go to the laptop, because then you won't work on it for very long, right? So like that was a trick for me. But also I have a client who, when she lives in a studio. This is actually from a while ago. She lived in a studio with her boyfriend, and they both were actors and they both were writers, and they're living there. Like, just really put yourself there for a second, okay? Just really think about that. And they had a rule that when any one of them had a baseball hat on, you can't talk to them.
Ooh.
So that, like, I'm in the kitchen table with a baseball hat on, it's no talking time. It's not like make a gesture, like, do you want a cup of coffee? Like, nothing. Like, it is no talking to time. And what I took away from that is I could relate to my work that way. The distractions are not always a human being, but the distraction is 16 tabs open on your computer, or the distraction is, having your phone near your computer or whatever, like just making that kind of boundary. So Matt, I want to come over to you, kind of put the spotlight on you for a little while. Okay.
Yes.
Here. And, one of the things, we talked about this beforehand, so I want to make sure the audience is very aware of that, about how I shared with you that you were one of my first trans people that I knew of inside of my community. And the remarkable thing about that, I would say, is that you are, I don't know if the word outspoken is the right word, but I would say upfront. Like, this is something you claim and speak out about, and you said activism is part of your life. And one of the things, do you guys hear the loud plane? I'm gonna pause. We're gonna go back and say that again. Natalie, hopefully you heard that too. So I'm gonna try to go back and say that again, so we can edit this little chunk out, because I don't know where we don't have planes by me. Okay. It might be a helicopter. Okay. Here we go. So, all right. So Matt, kind of coming over to you, as I said before, we talked about this beforehand. I want to let the audience know that I talked about Matt, so I had permission to talk about this, is that you are one of the first trans people that I knew of inside of my community. Not the only one, but one of the first people, right? And I would say, I don't know that I would describe you as outspoken, but as an activist, it's something that you would bring up on our calls, and you could see the entire community like lean in and want so much to understand more, which is not your job, Matt. I want to make sure you acknowledge that, right? But that experience, without making it like a spectacle, right? I don't want to make it about some kind of spectacle moment, but it let me know how much hunger there is for understanding. And your willingness to share with us like your experience on set. And like, there was this beautiful moment where I'm going to spill here a little bit. You tell me if you want to take the mic at any point, you let me know. But there was this moment where you were talking about being on set and sharing what your pronouns are, and then having someone screw them up, and you're like, I don't want to be a dick, though. You may not have said the word dick. I'm doing this, but I can.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be a dick and correct them like 12 times, but I don't like the way it feels. And like, I don't want to be the person that was like, I don't want to come off as a jerk for having done it. And you just were so open about it in a way that you just suddenly gave everyone in the room a lesson. And
Yeah, yeah.
I just, and I know that it was not your job at all. I want to make sure we hear that, but it was so beautiful to have that. And so I wanted to personally thank you for me and for the rest of the people that you affected in that room. I think that was important. Sharon's like pointing at herself. And Matt, I'd love to just hear from you around, in my own journey to become an anti-racist and anti-biased organization, one of the things that I'm trying to really be clear on is it is not your job to educate me. It's my job to educate myself. But you have, I think, appeared as someone who wants to or is willing to educate. Might be a better way to say that. Can you speak into that just a little bit today?
Yeah, I mean, like, being a non-binary, like, person of color actor who's also autistic, like all the labels, it's realistically, I am one of the pioneers of trans activism in the film industry because there's only a certain amount of people. And I have basically, we have combined all the trans mask actors in the United States to create a little support group for ourselves, because that's just how many few that keep getting called into the room for consistent auditions and stuff like that. So we all just kind of need to band together and be like, yay, time to have support group time.
Yeah.
So I have taken it upon myself to, because activism has been something that I'm really passionate about since I was like very small, because I saw all these injustices. I grew up in Middle Village, Queens, which is the most Republican part of Queens that I have ever seen.
Wow. We don't think of anywhere in New York as ever being Republican. So when you say that, we go, oh, whoa, we need to have our eyes opened here. Yeah.
Yeah, they are not progressive people. And so growing up, because I was adopted by white Italian people, and their entire mantra for families like white, conservative, Christian, all that. And something never sat right with me that as a child, like just like the conservatism, like that ever since. Honestly, I blame anime, because anime, like all the morals from anime, I'm pretty sure just like raised me. Like I make this joke that Naruto has raised me.
Wait, tell us, for those of us who don't know the character and don't understand this, will you give us a little bit of a pull back the curtain and tell us a little bit about what you mean?
Yeah, so Naruto is a story about a kid who has like a demon fox inside of him, and he is like ostracized for that by his entire village, which is what I kind of leaned into, because being a brown person in an all-white family and like feeling ostracized by like being trans and queer and all that in childhood, but because I hyperfixated on him, I was constantly watching throughout my entire childhood, like from like third grade, like up until now, because it's still going.
Longest running anime of all time, sounds like one of the right.
And it's just like all the morals, like I look back on it, and I talk about this in therapy all the time. I look back on like the animes I hyperfixate on, and I just kind of integrated them into my morals, which has always been like fight for justice, fight for your friends, save the world, like that type of stuff. So that leads into my activism, because I'm so very much like, no, I want to fight for what's right. Like I want to give a voice to people who can't, which is part of the reason, besides like, my love of acting and loving performing, is that I want to give a voice to more non-binary people of color that can't speak up, whether that's for safety reasons or they just don't have like any voice or any presence. I want to be that voice, and I want to uplift the community so we can be like, hey, we exist. This is what's okay. This is what's not. Like, let's do this.
Yeah. And Matt, one of the things I even hear you saying is like, you are an actor who is trans and who is non-binary and saying this out loud, which is very different than someone who's a banker who doesn't necessarily have the, I don't want to say platform, because they could still be an activist or whatever, but like what you're saying is we have a place where we are being seen. There's a very clear, like the job is being seen in many ways. And so I love that that's part of what you do. So can you give the audience just a little bit of, maybe share that when we had that beautiful coaching where you were like, hey, this is not fun. This is annoying. I don't want to be like this on set. And also people need to get it right. Can you share a little bit of like what you've taken away or where that's landed now with you, or where you're at with that? Even if it's unresolved, are you open to sharing a little bit?
Can you like repeat the question? I kind of like mushed it all together in my brain.
Yes. So at the time, I'm going to kind of go back so that we can even edit that part out, so we don't have to have my Michigas on there, right? So we had this beautiful coaching where you were talking about being on set and having to remind people of your pronouns like more than once and feeling like that feels kind of shitty and I don't like having to do that. And also like, get it right, people. Like I told you already, what's your problem? And where are you with that now? Have you arrived at a perspective around that? Are you still having to do that? Just I'm wondering what the temperature is around that right now.
Right. I think I still stand like I'm kind of like really nervous to do it on set because like I'm not like a name actor. So like there's always that line to walk where you're kind of like you want to make a good impression, but you don't want to come off as an asshole. But I think I'm more set in my boundaries of like, no, you will not misgender me. Because like I said when I was asking for advice, I have a T-shirt that says they them. It's bright yellow. It like you can look at it and you're just like, oh, it they them in like big text, and people will look at it and just be like, oh, he him, and I'm like, what? Like oh my god, I also have a mask that says they them, like a cloth mask, and people still misgender me, and I'm like, I don't know how much more obvious I can get without like verbally saying it.
Right.
But
wait,
yeah, no,
wait, is this like your on-set uniform that you wear now? I wear my yellow shirt and I wear my mask.
Yeah, I'm about to get like a cute bucket hat I saw on like Etsy. It has they them in like sparkly sequins, and I'm like, yeah,
yes. You're like full of they them costume. I love it. I mean, also,
yes.
It's also at the same time as I love it, I'm also like, damn, that's annoying for you to carry on your shoulders.
It really is, because like I wear those things to make it easier for other people, because I recognize that people are still learning and they're not very used to using they them as like to refer to a person as instead of like, let's saying like someone left their coat on the ground. They're like, oh, I wonder like who left their coat on the ground. Like it just comes out naturally.
Right.
Referring to a person, I understand all that. But I like, there's only so many times that I can say it and people still not hearing it. And then I'm like, oh my God, like there's nothing more I can do than to consistently correct people,
yes.
But then it falls all on my shoulders. But something that I did learn is that like going straight to the AD and being like, hey, can you correct people for me? Because people are misgendering
talked about this.
me.
I think we talked about this a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like, yes.
Yeah, and it's been so helpful because, you know, the AD has like all their shit together. Like, we need to do this, we need to do that, like all this. And there have been times where I've been on set where the AD has just been absolutely wonderful. Like the second someone goes he, they're just like, no, they. No, they instantly shut down. And I'm like, thank you.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's really awesome. And I love that and I just want to appreciate again how much openly you're sharing about this, and just wanted you to know, that's why I wanted to have you here today, not only because, you know, I adore all of you, but also to share this in a very way where we can, I think, broaden the conversation, because now we have all the people who are listening right now. Hopefully there's a lot of ADs out there listening right now.
Yes.
Right? And Sharon, I want to come over to you, right? And wait, so what are the before I go there, like Sharon and Alison, were you both on those calls with me and Matt during that time?
Yes.
I feel like you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Very powerful.
Will you share a little bit of your experience, Alison? Like, what was it to hear that for you? Did you have a reaction or connection at all to any of that?
Yeah, I just felt how extremely frustrating that must be for you to make it so clear. And I don't know. I don't know why that doesn't connect with someone's brain waves between like the visual and the speaking.
Yeah.
I love the first AD hack, and it also, I don't know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and again, I you know, Sharon, you were nodding your head when we talked about how like everyone leaned in when this conversation started, because I think what we're also finding is such a deep curiosity about learning, at least in this community. I would say about doing better. This community is very much about doing better, I would say. So I think that was why, like, oh, how can I show up better was like, I feel like what we were experiencing. So circling over to Sharon, I wanted to share with you, every time I say Sharon in the same sentence, I feel like I'm making a joke, because I'm not. I'm just saying Sharon. Kind of what I learned from you. And two things I would say that I learned. One is, you know, there's this story that I think a lot of actors tell themselves, which is like, I took a break from the business and then I came back, and so I'm a bad actor, or like I have to prove myself again. And one of the things that you really modeled, I think, through the journey of like, oh, I don't have to apologize for taking a break. I just need to name that it happened. Or I need to name what it's been up to. Because Sharon has a very storied and incredible resume, both of almosts and real wins. And it can be like, well, I didn't do anything 2 years in the past year, so I suck, which is not actually the truth around anyone's career. So I think we all can take that away from this, because you might have a year where nothing happens or whatever, and like it's not a problem. So one thing I saw was just watching you kind of re-own that part of your career. Did you experience it the way that I observed it, or am I making that up?
No, I'm sorry to keep blowing smoke at you, as they say.
Blowing smoke is fake, though. Isn't it blowing smoke when you like pretend you like something? I think you say, I'm just blowing smoke up their ass. Oh no, is when you really like them?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Who knows? I'm sorry, I don't know, but that's not what I mean. So what I mean is that you have been such an inspiration to me. I mean, you have changed so much for me. Here I come out of this devastating illness, and I don't even know how you found me.
No, I don't either. I don't know how you found me. I didn't find you.
I have
divine intervention. Divine intervention.
Yes. And I'm telling you, the first time I did a workshop with you, I was like, oh my God, I love this man, and I want him to work with me for the rest of my life.
Okay, done. We're done. It's happening.
I mean, you have given me, I mean, it's even that little thing about remembering when I said to God, all those years ago at 16, give me this and I'll know what to do. What is your will,
Yeah.
And you reminded me of that. I didn't remember that, but why did I keep coming back? Because this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you give that to me.
Oh, well, this is Thanksgiving for you, but I will take that in. Yeah. So this thing that I took from you was like, I watched you go, oh, I'm allowed to claim that part of my career. And I think a lot of other people watched you do that. And a lot of other people's jaws dropped also at your career from where it's been. And that was exciting to watch. I saw Matt nod their head just now. Matt, did you experience that?
Yeah, just seeing like and also just hearing Sharon's like growth is like very jaw-dropping, inspiring, because it's just like, oh my God, like so much has happened.
Yeah, totally. And Alison, you were there too, and I'm sure you heard kind of the stories. I think because I know Sharon was in Agent Goals and you were in Actor Operating System, so you missed out a little bit. On Sharon's good journey there. But you've been in a calls with her too. Is there anything that you've noticed that you wanted to share about Sharon?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, just kind of being along for the ride on the bits of Sharon's journey that I get to see. It's been, I don't know how to say this. I feel like it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to say role model.
Okay,
but
you can.
I wanted to say it in a more like picturesque, like visual memory way. But just like seeing and hearing about like what you've done and like what you've been through, it kind of makes me feel like that's the way to do it. Like just keep going, and there's going to be setbacks and there's going to be unexpected things, but you deal with things with such grace that I really admire that.
Yeah. And Sharon, I think also one thing that I think a lot of actors should hear, when you said I wrote 16 children's books, like people, like we get excited about the other stuff you do besides acting. And every actor needs to remember that. Like when Matt is talking about anime and when Alison's talking about music, like, oh, I'm curious about that part of their life too. Like we sometimes silo ourselves into just talking about acting things, and actually we all lean in on the other stuff too, because we kind of like know a lot about what the acting thing is, but this other stuff is also so interesting to us. So I thought also that was a place where we claimed kind of some of your story, and I thought that was important. And then the other thing that I learned from you, and I really thought about this today from you, Sharon, is I think you all will agree with this, is that I very much lean on the side of let's make a positive and generous assumption about every human being at all times as much as we possibly can. And that comes to business as well. So managers and agents and all that stuff. And then there's this other thing which is known as we don't frickin' settle for dipshits, right? Like we have to own, like, great, I can have a positive, generous assumption all the time. And I don't have to settle for less than what it is that I want while owning that's my desire. Like there is some other actor who would be totally satisfied with this manager or agent or whatever, but I'm not that actor. So you're at least owning that, like, this is your perspective, not just like they're bad. It's that, oh, what I want for myself is not necessarily what I have. And I think that was, and I know you're in the journey of that right now,
Yes.
right? But like, and giving like a long leash around the positive and generous assumption and seeing where you can land with that. But I just thought that was such a beautiful modeling for me, who I think at times I can err on the side of positive and generous assumption. And so I have to remember, and we remember we're on planet Earth. This is a business, and we have to think of the black and whites at times. We can't just we can't also deny that there are laws of this planet, right? Sometimes they're not just the spirituality laws. The spirituality laws are the only truth, but these things need to be looked at. And so I thought that you've modeled that very well through challenges. How would you describe that?
Well, well.
We can be as careful as we need to be also.
I have a new agent and a new manager because of agent goals. And I love my agent and my manager. I keep sending love to. Now, see, I mean, I really didn't know to do this, but you were the one when I was complaining about, well, he's not, and you said, give him, give him love and respect and gratitude every day. Just send it to him. And so I did that, and you said, do it for 30 days. So I did it for 30 days. And then that day that it ended, he said some horrible thing. Okay. And again, I was like, oh my God. And now I'm sort of, again, with him, because I got new pictures. Right. And my agent got his decisions back to me that day. Right. And the managers had him for over a week. And I've called and I've emailed and nothing. Yeah. So, it's challenging. But yeah. I have been, with managers and agents over the years, really good ones and really not good ones. And, I have you to work through.
Well, I think what I want to say, so much of our calls, I think lately, if you guys haven't noticed, we have so many actors who are getting representation. And I know, Alison, you're about to do this. Reach out to some people, isn't that right? That's what we're about to, right? And we have so many actors that have representation. A lot of our conversations are around like relating to representation and having conversations with them from a position of like, am I crazy for thinking this? Am I wrong for wanting this? Is this the right way to say this? And like, we have to really be careful about how much pussyfooting we do around like speaking into what's actually happening. And so I don't want to take away your discernment, Sharon, right? That'd be the opposite of what we want here, right? So as you're going through this journey, like we always want to have like, sure, the manager's busy, and like, where do I then have to say, hey, this doesn't feel right. Like, I want to just get clear. Like, is this typical or am I being weird? Like that we have to own what I see you doing through this is owning yourself. And there'll come a time when you say, yeah, this is just how they are and I'm okay with it. Or this isn't going to work for me and I am going to have to make a change, right? And I think that's like either the sharp feeling of like, oh no, absolutely not. If you were clear, you'd be clear is what I feel like at times, right? And so I think part of what our work is making sure you're clear while you're thinking about it, right? Like not bringing your old baggage to it or something.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Right. Yes.
Is there anything that anyone here wants to just share as we're moving into this season of gratitude around thanks for what it's been like, any kind of around witnessing what you've seen in the other actors in the group? What's like some of your biggest takeaways, I would say, from being a part of this coaching group? Would you guys want to share that? Yeah, Matt.
I think, how do I word this? Like what you were saying earlier with how like everyone just kind of listens to my story, and it just like, it's not even me like trying to teach, it's me just, existing and being like, hey, I need some guidance. Like, this is just what it happens to be. I'm really grateful for that because like through just like everyone's like willing to listen and just feel like educated on like things that they aren't educated for prior. It's allowed me to be even more open about my identity in spaces that are not like trans dominated. but more like cis dominated. And it's been really nice to be able to know that like if I hop on a call and I need some guidance, I don't have to hide any aspect of myself like at all. I can just exist, which is not something that I feel often, because often I feel the need to put on a mask of some sort, especially with my identity, to digest and make it easier to digest for other cis people, which I shouldn't do. But like,
No shade to yourself, but I hear what you're
yeah,
saying.
I'm working on it. I'm working on being authentic everywhere, but especially like in like Actors Operating System. And even when I was back in like your audition magnet, like when I first ever met you back in like what, 2018,
Yes.
that like just being able to speak my truth is like it's been so great for my growth, and just being able to sit and be like, these are my boundaries, this is who I am, here you go, enjoy.
Oh, Matt, I just can't tell you what it means to hear you say that, because it's so important to me that you don't have to feel like you have to perform inside of a group. That
Yes.
you can show up as you are. And so that means a lot to me to hear that from you and from anyone, that like you don't have to be having a good day to show up. Right. And I also think like when you're not having a good day is the best day for you to show up, because then probably something will happen there. Right. But I just really appreciate you saying that you can show up there. I think that's important. I think that also, like, for anyone listening, like, to find spaces like that where you can show up, whether you feel like you just skin your knee or you're on top of the world, that you can be with where you are, where the people around you are going to love you no matter what, or respect you no matter what, is so important. And it can, of course, be harder depending on what identity you are, right? It can be harder to find at times. And so I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. Alison, any takeaways for you from just, and this is not me looking for like praise for the program, I'm actually saying like takeaways of things you may have learned that you're being with right now.
I've just been really grateful for how supportive everyone in the community is. I think it's really funny that a lot of times in like the media or like film and TV, our popular image of actors is like, I will kill someone literally for this role. And it's like, that is so far from what I've experienced. Like, people will send you messages, people will offer like any kind of help or like to work together with you on things you're working on. And I guess the lesson for me is kind of just like showing up wholeheartedly. There's definitely been times on our coaching calls when I've been like in the moment talking, and then afterwards I was like, did I just sound like the most spoiled child in the world? And people will always be like, no, I relate to what you're saying. And so it's like just showing up as yourself is going to impact somebody, hopefully in a positive way.
And Alison, I just want to share with you that it's so important what you just said, because I think even you've been on the call, like, I don't want to sound like I think you've even said out loud, I don't want to sound like a pouty kid on this call. Like, you even said language like that. And you just see everybody rushing to be like, please talk. We need someone to say what you're saying right now. And it is a testament to you also for how you show up that people will swoop in to help. I want to just make sure you don't look at that part of yourself. Whereas, you know, if there is an actor who may be a little more like, I've got this covered, or like, I don't want any, like, there's like a defensiveness from them. You won't see that experience of someone swooping in, but there's just you have a very open quality that you bring to the calls of like, hey, let's play. Like, I'm challenged over here, but I'm willing to get in the sandbox with you guys. What do we want to do? Like, and that is a real testament to, I think, how you show up. So that's one more thing that I think I can be thankful to you for demonstrating, for everybody to watch that. I think it's great for people to see you show up, the people listening right now to even hear like, oh, there's a way I can show up where people feel compelled to contribute. I think that's an important thing for us to walk away with.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think sometimes it's so hard for us to see ourselves from outside of ourselves. So I definitely appreciate that. And I'm
thinking about I haven't had my nails done, and I didn't take my haircut next week, and like, where's my dirty clothes, and what am I doing tomorrow? Like, we've got all those things going on. We have no idea the people around you are going like, so glad you said that. How can I help? Like, that we get to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm always just so excited to see everybody that I think maybe that excitement comes back to me.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think that everyone is excited to see you too. I know like for a second, I'll just say like for anybody who's in any group ever on a Zoom room or something, like that chat box is like such a nice time. Like people are having these great side conversations and loving up on each other at times. And I think anywhere where anyone listening can find an environment like that, like run, don't walk, because you need to feel like, yes, I'm part of a group, but I'm also an individual. So I just think that's really powerful. Sharon, you've shared a bunch of takeaways today. Is there anything you didn't get to share that you wanted to share?
Well, I love the community so much, because I'm not alone, because I have people to go to. And I was going to bring up the chat thing. I mean, I'm not a chat person. I mean, I don't go in there very much unless you say, do this, you know.
Sharon, go to the chat and do this. Right.
Yeah. Well, no, all of you do this. Then I'll do it. But otherwise, I pretty much stay out of it. But I will go back and look at all the beautiful things people say to me. You know, I'm trying to concentrate on what you're saying and what that person is saying. So I don't want to chat, but it means so much.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, maybe I need to start doing more of that.
No, it sounds like it's working and doing exactly what it's supposed to do, by the way. So I don't think you need to change anything. I want to thank you guys for spending this time with me. This was like a wild idea that we had. Like, let's have a Thanksgiving episode where I get to talk to some actors. And it ended up being us talking a lot about AOS, but also I think getting to know you guys, your stories a lot more. And I say this all the time on our calls together. It's like, I'm so grateful to be able to spend that time with you. But getting to know you personally is something that I carry with me inside my heart, whether or not I'm on a call. And I think about you, like I said, like we were talking about you and I'm thinking about you all the time. And it's such a privilege to watch you do what you do, whether it's big or small. I'm trying not to be cry right now, right? So whether it's big or small. And so I just want to thank you for your investment of your time, energy, and money to showing up to a program like this, where I know that it isn't just on the calls where you're invested, it's between the calls where you are making changes to the way you're doing things, or like Matt's talking to the people on set differently and making a change with the way they talk to the AD, right? Or Alison is thinking about how I'm going to approach headshots in a different way. Or Sharon's like, I'm going to have great thoughts about my manager for the next 30 days or whatever, right? And I know that work is not work that I'm there to do with you. But to witness you do that is a gift for me. And a gift for everybody there. So I'm not saying thank you on behalf of just myself, but I think on everybody else inside of this community. And hopefully the people listening right now are gleaning some good juju from the great contribution that you make to this community. So on the eve of Thanksgiving, when this episode comes out, I'm giving great thanks to the three of you and then everyone else in this community and all the listeners who are listening today. And I hope that this can inspire you to, especially in this season. I think that, like it's always a season of thanks, I think, but in this season right now, kind of the world, or at least this country, I guess, takes stock of like Thanksgiving, like where's there spaces to be grateful for, that it inspires some degree of thanking yourself for how you're showing up. Because that's what I'm noticing in each of you. And so I thank you so much. Now listen, there's going to be people who are listening to this who are going to want to know where they can learn some more about you. Is there places where they can go to learn things about you? I'll start with you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always on Instagram. That's like my main social media platform, and you can follow me there at Matt Pasini official. Yeah, and also you can follow my podcast at _the studio on Instagram.
Right, and we'll put that in the chat in the show notes too, so people can definitely get it correct. What about you, Alison?
Yeah, I am online on Instagram and Twitter.
Great.
My handle is Goth Blair Waldorf.
I love it so much. Whenever it shows up in my feed, I get excited.
If you're a Gossip Girl fan, I hope that will give you the exact image of me. And yeah, it's spelled out on Instagram, and then Twitter, because of character limits, it's missing the O in Waldorf.
Okay, got it. And Sharon, what about you? Or can we get your kids' books somewhere, children's books somewhere?
Oh yeah, they're on Amazon.com.
Great.
Otherwise I'm not on Instagram.
Great, good for you.
I hate Facebook, but I do it because of us, because of our community, because it really helps. But otherwise it's evil. And let's see, and I have a website, SharonSharth.com.
Right. And I think we should all go out and buy one of your books, though, and give it to someone. That'd be a gift. So I just want to sum up by saying thank you again for not only spending this time with me, but all that you've given us and given this community. And hope you all are inspired by what you heard today. If you want to learn more about them, you have places to do that. All right, if you want to see us have this conversation, because there's a lot of smiles going on, you are welcome to pop on over to the YouTube channel where you will see all 4 of our smiling, talking faces there. And that episode usually ends up being a little more uncut over there. Like, we don't do as much editing. So if you want to see the giggles in between, that's a good episode to listen to. So thank you everyone for listening today. And thank you to all of my guests. I'm so grateful for you too. Allison, Sharon, and Matt, take very good care of yourself. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.